Here we are in late 2020. We find ourselves still without Digimon Survive. The world is still crazy. Digimon Adventure 2020 is out and it's being alright. So what do we have to do to entertain ourselves? Well, since Survive's being delayed until who knows when next year at this point, we have to make do with what we have. So, what am I trying to do as one of my latest challenge runs? Digimon Cyber Sleuth, the original, and Hacker's Memory, both available now in the complete edition, to add even more to it. But, Rordrik, these are games that have been out for a while now. They're the exact same games, basically. What's the point? Well, the point is, we need to try and make something different. What I recommend is called the Nuzlocke run. And while this has been something that's been very popular with Pokemon for a long time, those of you who are unfamiliar with the Pokemon and are just more fans of Digimon, which I hope, which many of you may be, we must overthrow the little rat overlord that's been holding us down all these years. So, what is a Nuzlocke run? Well, I'll tell you what it is in Pokemon terms and how we can apply it to the Digimon games and hopefully come up with a more fun and interesting experience for all of us in order to truly grow our experience of these games that many of us have played a few times through now. So first things first, what is a Nuzlocke run? Well, the term Nuzlocke came from an artist over on 4chan who created a Nuzleaf, which is a Pokemon that was a lot like John Locke, and he wanted to do a run of Pokemon Ruby with a lot more difficulty. And his rule set and his story of how it came to be became popular enough that they literally named the entire challenge that's become so popular after him, Nuzlocke. Nuzleaf and John Locke put together. So, what are the rules for a Nuzlocke? Why has it become so popular? Well, there's two main rules that pretty much make up a Nuzlocke. Everything else is kind of optional. The very first thing is any Pokemon, or Digimon in this case, that faints is considered dead. That's right. One misstep, one time in your Digimon or Pokemon is dead, is knocked out, it's gone. You can no longer use it. Much like games like Fire Emblem and other games have made this a very interesting mechanic that's been used for a while now. It very much limits you and makes it much more tense, and that's a large part of the added difficulty and interest of the run. The other main thing is you can't go crazy with the number of ones that you can catch or convert. In Pokemon, it's the first one you run into in every new dungeon or route is what you can capture. So in essence, your resources are limited and your number of ones that you can add to the party are also limited. So every single one of your team members is important. They are truly, you get to know them. They're essential. They're not just one of a whole bunch that you have running around. Like in a typical Digimon run, I mean, you have your farms full of 20 apiece, you have another 30 sitting in your bank, 11 in your team. So that's a huge number that you'll never really get to touch. But this lets you know your monsters well. So, how do we take what Pokemon has done and is still very popular, YouTube, streaming, everywhere, it's been very popular. How do we transfer it over to Digimon? Well, here are some of my suggestions of what I'm doing with my run, and some additional rules that can make it a little easier or a little harder, depending on what you might be looking for. But Rordrik, I hear you saying, Pokemon didn't have any difficulty settings. Cyber Sleuth and Hacker's Memory, they both have a hard mode. Isn't that enough? Well, for those of you who have played on hard mode like I have, hard mode is definitely more difficult, that it certainly is, but once you get going with all of your tactician USBs and everything that we know to really amplify the game at this point with all of our training and all of our experience breaking, it really doesn't get to be a challenge until you get into the very end game DLC content. So if you want to make the rest of the game throughout it a lot more difficult, here are some of the options that we can do in order to make it more difficult. So, the number one rule, like I said before, any Digimon that is ever KO'd, when any battle, whether it's a boss battle, a random battle, anything, must permanently go into the bank and can never leave it again. You can mark them, you can add to their name dead, you can do anything like that. You can take things off of their body, So, you know, if you happen to have gotten a Tactician USB or something and need to take it off of them, you can still take anything off of them. But they are gone. That Digimon is completely gone for the rest of the run. You cannot use it. It is considered dead, deleted. I guess might be more accurate to use the Digimon terminology. The other big rule that I use is every chapter you get one more Digimon. The only exception to this I used is in chapter 1, because it combines the prologue, you can get the 2 Digimon you need to make a team. Then every chapter after that you can get one more. So when you start chapter 2, you can convert another Digimon. Chapter 3, you can gain a 5th. All the way up through chapter 20, which, using this method, you will have a total of 21 Digimon you can use ever. That is all you can use for the run. Throughout the entire thing, in case one random boss battle, one of your Digimon dies, oh no, that means you're down to 20. You can never get more Digimon back. Once they are gone, they count against your cap completely. And only the first Digimon in every chapter that you get to 100% can be converted. Or, the way I did it is I wrote down which Digimon I got to 100% first, in order, down the list. So even by the end of chapter 3, I had a list of the next 8 Digimon that I had to convert. The first ones to get to 100% is what you have to work with. So you don't know what you get to work with, and because it's randomized what you run into a dungeon, the idea is it helps to keep it more diverse, and you don't always just stick with the same Digimon. And the fourth and final rule is if there is ever a game over, if for whatever reason not all your Digimon are on your team, and you lose to a boss and the game over screen comes up, the run's over. Delete the save file. It's gone. Anytime you are defeated, you must completely restart the run. The run is gone. The save file, everything that you've done. This is generally the closest that I could go to what's most generally talked about as the most universally accepted Nuzlocke rules from Pokemon, trying to convert them over to Digimon. Now, there are some variations of this that you can use, whether you want to make it a little easier or a little harder. Most people who go for these kind of runs want to make it harder. So let's go into the list of ideas that I have if you want to make it harder and what they might mean for the run. Rule number 1 on my list of additional rules and challenges that you can add to the run to make it more difficult: no items in combat. Now, this is an extremely difficult one, especially early on when all you have is maybe, say, heal, or you maybe got an anti-panic or an anti-stun on some of your Digimon. That's your only healing in combat. So really, this rule mostly only applies to boss battles. Most normal battles you can heal outside of battle. It's not that big a deal. But in boss battles, this changes things considerably. If a Digimon is low, you may have to heal and have them guard to try to keep them alive, while only having one of your Digimon actually being able to attack throughout that, making the battle much more longer, and therefore any chance of something strange happening, of one of your Digimon getting teamed up on and taken down and you can't heal them. Or the early game stat boosting items. You can't use those. Anything like that. Any item in combat is useless. Sorry. Obviously, the revival capsules are already useless. You can never use those. You're only allowed a total of 8 Digimon. Well, why Rordrik, that's a really weird number. Why would you choose 8? I'm a sucker for Digimon Adventure, okay? Some people have said all the way down to 6, only, 2 of each type. But I think 8 could be an interesting number. You do the original 8 Digimon. Now, whether you actually go with Agumon, Gabumon, Patamon, and all them, of the original Adventures line, or you do whatever 8 you want. Well, actually, if you do the original 8, you don't have any virus types on your team, so that might be especially difficult. So, do that at your own discretion. No using the Digifarm at all. Like, you cannot train, or you can just use one of these. You cannot train, you cannot develop to try to get your USBs, nor to increase the training that you can get out, or the experience gains, or bit gains, or yen gains. I'm sorry. Every other Digimon game, the money is bits. but because it's in the real world mostly in this game, it's yen. I always make that mistake. So, no using the Digifarm to use either of those. I mean, in the grand scheme of thing, you know, trying to investigate, that's not going to change a whole lot in most instances. So, that's not something I'm so worried about limiting. But the training to get the additional stats to help you survive and the not being able to develop can be difficult. But if you don't have a lot of Digimon on your team, being able to get them to actually have enough Digimon in there to train or develop can be difficult all on its own because you want them in the main team to gain the experience. It's an interesting trade-off that you have to consider. Another rule that could be very limiting to limit your Digimon's power is you can only stay on one Digivolution line. So take the first Digimon you're likely going to convert, Koromon, because, spoiler, the first two scripted fights that you have to do that give you conversion are against 4 Koromon. So you're very likely to end up with a Koromon as one of your first 2 Digimon that you're going to convert. So that Koromon, whether you take it down the usual line of Koromon, Agumon, Greymon, Metal Greymon, War Greymon, and then to Omnimon if you're really feeling zesty, but that removes one of your Digimon, the DNA Digivolve. That's scary. But if you're going to stick on that line, you have to stay on that line. There's no taking a dip from Agumon over Tyrannomon in order to get the acceleration charge, go back, and then go to Greymon. If you do this, it will very much limit the number of moves that you can learn. You won't have as nice, well-rounded of Digimon. You might have to choose carefully what lines you go down to make specialized Digimon, and you can't have them do everything. Or, you know, the most simple thing to make this run more difficult is to play on hard mode, because Digimon hit a lot harder is pretty much the main thing. They have more hit points and they hit harder is really the biggest difference in hard mode. In hard mode, especially even some of these very early fights before you even get on your feet, you could have many runs end before you get out of the prologue if you're not careful. When I played on hard mode, I first started with my Hagurumon because I wanted to get an early Platinum Sukamon, and he got his head handed to him. It was scary. It was very difficult to get through even the prologue with just the Hagurumon. So, depending on which one you pick early, it can also greatly change how difficult the start of your run is. So those are my main variations to the rules that would make the run more difficult. If for those of you who, you know, want the extra difficulty or have run it before and are like, well, what can I do to make it more difficult? Oh, and one more that I didn't mention is never use the healing station. You know, the station in the Digilab when you go to the left of the Digifarm that you can pay 600 yen or however much depending on how many Digimon you have to fully heal your team, you can't use that. Normally, in a lot of my runs, I use that thing very rarely anyway, because you get your full HP and MP back when you level up. It's not as big a deal, but completely overruling using that can also make you have to use your items more carefully. Again, generally I would say this might affect you a little in the early game. In the later game, I mean, if you can do the developments to get the Tactician USBs, you'll be fine with all the levels you want. So that's my list of things to make it harder. Let me know what you think, and let me go over just a couple of ideas for those of you who kind of like the idea of this run, but maybe want to make it a little easier for yourself. So let's go over those. So easing into the Nuzlocke run, option number 1, play in New Game Plus. This allows you to have access to all of your islands. This allows you to have access to all of your equipment, all of your memory, all of your Tactician USBs. You know, those might be a little important. This allows you to get a much easier start in the beginning. So it will likely make most of the early game pretty easy for you. Since you'll have access to everything to make your Digimon really powerful for where they are in the game. Especially because it also brings over your memory. So you won't have to worry about memory issues if you digivolve your Digimon up to higher levels too soon. So, therefore, this will make it a lot easier to get things started. Idea number 2. Every new dungeon that you enter, you can convert a new Digimon. This will give you a total of 35 Digimon, because you have 12 digital spaces, 10 digital networks, the 5 Kowloon levels, 4 other kind of random dungeons, and 4 digital shifts, which gives you a total of 35 Digimon to play with, plus your original one. So it could actually be 36. So this gives even more than 50% more than what I was giving in my playthrough that I'm trying. This gives you a lot more room to actually have people in the farm to train and develop for you. This gives you a lot more wiggle room in case you run into a boss that kills a couple of your Digimon. You'll have some room in order to grow and still keep playing without feeling really strapped for your team. And thirdly, the first Digimon to reach 200% conversion data are the ones that you will convert, instead of only going to 100%. Now this is a very minor difference, honestly, in the long run, because the primary thing that going up to 200% over 100% gives you, it starts you at 5 ABI instead of 0 at 100%. This allows you to gain access to a couple of forms a little more early, gives you a few more training points that you can play with if you put them in the farm to train them. So this gives you just that wee little bit of power spike that'll help you in order to get over some of the challenges that you might come across. And those are pretty much my ideas for how to make this run just a little easier. So we've got the ideas, we've got some different ways that we can play the game. Do you want to limit yourself to certain Digivolution lines, play it on hard mode, but maybe you do want the 200% scan data so you can make it a little easier for yourself? Mix up the ideas. I cannot find anywhere where there is an official way to play a Nuzlocke run. And wait, Nuzlocke? That comes from a Pokemon comic based on Nuzleaf. So we can't really call it that for a Digimon run. Who dies in Digimon a lot and tries to be really sad a lot in it? That's a tough one. Oh, maybe we should call it a Leo Lock run? Poor Leomon. He's become such a running joke of him dying in the anime. It's really gotten kind of almost sad. So, these are my ideas. What are some of your favorite ideas? How do you play the game to shake things up? Do you maybe not even go to Mega? Good luck doing that. Maybe you want to limit some of the forms you can even get up to. Do a rookie-only run. Try and speed run it. Try and do whatever you want to make it get as much enjoyment as you can out of these games. Because when are we getting Survive? Who knows? So, thank you all for watching. Any of you who made it here to the end, thank you so much. If you have any other ideas you want to add to the list, and maybe we'll try and make some official rules for it, let me know down in the comments below. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you want to find more of my Digimon content that I'll be pushing out hopefully here in the near future. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, no matter what time it is. Hope you stay safe in these odd times we find ourselves in. And remember, everyone, keep staying awesome. Enjoy Digimon. Show that little yellow rat who's boss. Good night.